So I've had a few requests from people to update you on how I'm getting on with my Super Soco TS 1200R electric motorbike. Well, I've covered about 1800 miles on it now, so I've had a bit of a chance to form a good impression of it, and overall I have to say I'm still very pleased with it. However, there are a few negatives, and let's take you through those first. Well, the first negative is that something has actually broken, and what broke is the mud guard to number plate holder bracket thingy. So I had to make up another one with these two bits of aluminium, and I've just noticed actually that these are starting to crack away as well. So um, I'm going to have to come up with something much better to secure the back number plate. Yeah, oh dear. Now another problem is the acceleration. Now this is a moped sort of equivalent, so it is very low powered, but even so the acceleration is woeful to be honest. Um, when you come up to a junction, especially if you're turning right, you have to wait for a huge gap really to stand any chance of getting across. I've nearly come unstuck a couple of times where there's what seemed to be a massive gap that I have no problem to pull out into with the car, or indeed the motorhome even, and the stuff coming up behind you closes in rather too fast for comfort. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. Another little thing to be aware of is the connection between the brakes and the motor. Now when you're riding along and you apply either brake, it cuts the power to the motor completely. So if you want to ride just sort of feathering either of the brakes, you can't really because the motor cuts out. And it does take a little while to cut back in again sometimes, which is a little bit unsettling. So for instance, if you slow down to go around a corner and then you want to accelerate out of it, sometimes it doesn't for a second or so until the motor cuts back in again. So that's something to be aware of as well, which can be slightly disconcerting. First couple of times it happened, I thought I'd broken it and I was going to have to walk home. Now this is the lock that you use to release the cover where the batteries are, and I've heard a few stories of people forgetting their keys and leaving them in there. I don't think that's really the fault of the bike, because a lot of bikes have this arrangement, but it's definitely something to be aware of. One thing though I think that is slightly poor design, I'm not sure how they could get around it, but this is the lock that you use to release the battery. So when the battery's in there, you want to take it out, you turn this and you lift the battery out. Now I live in constant fear of closing this and locking the key in. I've got a spare key at home, but if I manage to do that at work, then I'm stuffed really, aren't I? The other slight problem is that, again, I'm not sure how they could get round, is that although it has a nice alarm and an immobiliser on it when you lock it on the key fob and go away, if like me you have to take the battery out to charge it at work because the range of this isn't really sufficient for me to get to work and home on the same charge, then of course as soon as you take the battery out, the alarm and immobiliser don't work whilst it's parked outside at work. So I have to lock it up with a separate chain as well, which I probably would do anyway, but just worth knowing that obviously if you have to leave it outside um, while you're charging up, then you do have to lock it up as well and not rely on that alarm and an overriser. So that really brings me to the last of my negatives, really, and that is that it just doesn't quite have the range that would make it that much more usable. It's fine for me for commuting. I can easily get to work. It's usually used a shade over 50% of the charge on the display, but I do know that that display isn't particularly accurate, and the second 50% seems to go a lot quicker, which is the wrong way round really if you're going to have an inaccurate display. Um, so I do need to charge it up whilst I'm at work. And there's been a few occasions where I've thought maybe I could go into Halfords in Huntingdon, for instance, from here, and I just think it would be pushing the limits really, because you don't really want to drive it on anything less than full power, because you really are going quite slowly then. Um, so yeah, that's something that could be improved, I guess. So they're the negatives really, but what about the positives? Well, I have to say the big main positive for me is the cost of running it, which is pretty much free really. I mean, obviously charging up the battery does cost a little amount. At least half of my journeys are with the battery charged up at work, because I'm able to charge it on a 13 amp socket. And you know, the servicing, even when I had it serviced by the motorbike shop, only cost me, I think, was it £50? So that wasn't very much. And really, I think next time I might service it myself. The only thing really to maintain are the brakes and possibly greasing or lubricating somehow the bearings and possibly the frame pivots, I guess. There's not really much else to do on it. I have to say as well, the lights are very good. I haven't driven it in the dark much, but I have driven it in the dark, and I was very impressed with the lights. They are very bright, so no issues there at all. The ride is perhaps a little harsh, but I don't mind it so much, and it is adjustable at the back, so you can adjust it for sort of hard or soft suspension, but it's a very light bike, so I think it's inevitable you might get bounced around a little bit when there's potholes and such in the road. Um, the other thing I like about it really is the styling of it. It is a nice looking bike really for an electric motorbike. I guess that can be a bit of a negative because it does look like it should be much faster than it actually is. So when you're waiting at those junctions for a nice big gap, or you're pulling out and the driver behind you is wondering why you're going so slow, they might think you're a bit of an idiot because you are on what looks at a casual glance, unless you sort of look at the width of tyres and stuff, like it might be quite a fast bike, and yeah, it's not really at all. But yeah, I'm loving it, and it's saving me an absolute fortune in petrol, and of course wear and tear on the car is much reduced because I'm only really using the car for leisure purposes these days. So I'm very, very glad I bought it, and I think I'll continue using it for quite some time. And I have to say, that silence hasn't really been an issue. I was initially worried that people might be constantly looping into my path because they haven't heard me coming, but that hasn't really happened. I think people do tend to look rather than rely on their ears, so fingers crossed that doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. Another question I've been asked is about riding it in the wet, and I have ridden it through several rather heavy rainstorms. And I haven't disappeared in a shower of sparks and been electrocuted, which is good. So it does seem perfectly practical to use it in the rain. I have heard a few tales of people who have left them out in the rain and the power button has had a little leak around it and caused some issues, but I put it in the garage obviously here, and at work it is in a covered bike shed, so it only really is out in the rain whilst I'm actually riding it. So there we go, cracking piece of kit really, I reckon. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it to anyone as long as you can cope with the slow speeds and the lack of acceleration really. They are the two main drawbacks, but the free commute to work is definitely a great thing, and we can spend all the savings on jaunts away in the motorhome. Well, that's all for now. If you enjoyed it, press like. Subscribe if you want to see some more. And ring the bell to be notified when we upload something new.